So I asked them just to explain what the idea of the ego is for them. And what they said was that the ego wants us to be perfect. Okay, it wants us to be perfect. And it pushes against imperfection, our imperfection, not other people's imperfection. It loves other people's imperfection. It just doesn't like ours. Okay? So it pushes back against that. For us to move forward, what they're saying is that we can't have that kind of duality within our own selves. We've got to be whole. To move into the new earth, we've got to be whole. We've got to have the yin and yang together as one. And if we're fighting against ourselves because our ego doesn't like part of us, then we're not whole. And therefore we can't move forward. That's basically what they're saying. It's a very simplistic, energetic thing. We can only move forward when we're whole. Yeah? And if there's an internal battle against whether we really like ourselves or not, whether we like all of ourselves, then we can't move forward. So they were talking about the people who we would call sleepers at the moment. The sleepers, their ego is fully formed and it wants them to believe that they are absolutely right. Okay? And what they were saying was interesting. They were saying that's why the ego works so well in the Dark Ages, because what people have to be in the Dark Ages is very fixed, very closed-minded. And so the ego, when it's at its highest, only sees you and your stuff. And perhaps, what you're affiliated to. This is why cults work very well. In the Dark Ages, cults work fantastically well because the ego is all there going, yes, and we're right, and we've got the right, and we're the best, and we're God's chosen people, and all of that. So the ego loves that kind of thing. And that's why the sleeping people believe themselves to be right. The ego would never allow them to be considering that as a part of them that's completely flawed. People are still waking up though. How can that be? How can they still wake up if the ego is working like this? Well, remember that to wake up, you've got to be uncomfortable. And so there's a limit. The ego will, be able to control what the person's thinking to a certain limit. But then, when you're deeply, deeply, deeply uncomfortable, when you're in pain, when you're suffering, well, then things happen. And that's what the waking up process is. Then they talked about the people who come over to our side, but bring with them the ego. And so, of course, what happens on our side, it becomes even easier because we don't have to, we justify our position. But also, the ego is this. This is what the ego is. You're all a bunch of bastards and I'm great. Okay? That's what the ego is. So here, the people who don't resolve the ego fall into the same pattern, which is, I'm the dog's bollocks and you're a twat. Okay? And it's easy because now we've got the baddies to blame, we've got the sleeping people to blame, we've got the governments to blame, we've got all of that to blame. And so it's very easy on this side to have the ego even more inflamed because we actually then have a self-righteous purpose. The sleepers don't. They just want to live their life and, I'm happy and I'm right in what I'm doing. And we have this whoa, man, I've looked at the information now. I know what the truth is. And you're a bunch of bastards. Yeah. So that's what the emissaries weren't saying, that you're a bunch of bastards. I'm just using those words, okay? They don't swear. But then they said that that's a process that we've got to go through. Okay, we've got to go through it. But then we've got the people who've been awake for a while, who are ready to move into the new earth, who are ready to make this move. And so what our job is now is to get that ego healed so that it can help us. You see, the ego, I believe, will transmute into something very, very beautiful. Once we heal it, once we help it, we get it on our side. And it's always on our side. But we need to kind of come into the light a little bit, yeah? So the emissaries were saying that we have to have our light and dark together, like two cogs. And they're saying that we can't deny one, it just because we're not whole. And if the whole thing is a holistic healing process, we've got to have them both. They work beautifully together, but they don't work well separately. And so that's why we've got to incorporate, we've got to have them understanding one another, the dark and the light, the up and the down. And they give me a nice example of what that is. And they said, well, look at nature. Nature has this tremendous mix of beauty and cruelty. Nature's very beautiful and it's very cruel at the same time. And how can that be? It gives us everything we need, and yet it can be dreadfully cruel. And that's what they're saying about the power that we have, that we must have the two sides. So I asked them, will it always be the case? Will we always have this dark side as we go through? And they said, yes, but the process of us, if you imagine, and this is another topic, but we've got to go from duality to oneness. Yeah. So the 3D is duality, like there's you and I, this table and me. Yeah. And my dark side and my light side. And so what they're saying is that the whole process through the new earth, through the age of light, is us polishing, buffing, cleaning ourselves, so that little by little we get to the stage where we return to oneness, which is the end result, is it not? So that's what they're saying, is just because we're in the new earth doesn't mean that we're going to be all perfect beings. It's not the way that it's going to be. We have work to do for as long as we are in the earth plane. And they were talking about the earth plane, not the heavenly planes. Right? As long as we are in the earth plane, we have work to do, which is this honing, buffing, cleaning. And that's always going to be the case. All that's going to happen, I think, as we move into this new earth is that it's going to be different kind of work, self-work. Here it's quite like clumsy and heavy. And I think it'll get lighter. Maybe the issues that we're dealing with later on might be nicer ones, perhaps. So it's going to be a process of constant improvement. Yeah, constant improvement. So the work's not done. It's not over. And if there's one thing that I've learned about this, and everything that the emissaries tell me, but also what I feel and sense, is that there is no jump into paradise. It's a process that's going to go on for a long time, and it's all the whole idea of it is so that we can work on ourselves and we can make ourselves into better beings, until finally we're so fucking good that God goes, oh, you can join me again because you are one and we are one. Yeah. Now when that happens, I have no idea. A long way away, but that's the process, right? And that's the whole point of this. The whole point. But it makes for a nice journey, doesn't it? It makes for loads of good stories to be able to tell as well. So there you have it. Let's be the prophet, and let's just keep talking about our stuff, because that's what makes it strong. The more we talk about it, the stronger it gets. But that doesn't mean that you have to go with the hope of waking people up. It doesn't matter. You just speak your truth. You speak your truth. And I think we're past the stage now. Truly, we're past the stage of shying away from it. Personally, I think we're past the stage. I never go out specifically to talk to people about this kind of thing. Never. Not my intention. Never. But every now and again it comes up. And I speak my truth. And then they tell me to shut the fuck up. And then I shut the fuck up. But I've spoken my truth. Not with the intention of waking them up. With the intention, just as the prophet, that they're not going to change me. I know where I am. And I'm happy with where I am. Yeah. And is that my ego saying I'm right, you're wrong? Probably. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe yes. Don't know. But it feels right. It feels right that all I would say is, I think I mentioned my auntie watched a 2-hour documentary about something, and then she was telling me about it, and I've spent the last 17 years of my life studying these things. So that's, to me, that's the measure. Like I've done a lot of work to understand where we are and to understand how things are. Yeah, so I would rather rely on my 17 years of study than her 2-hour documentary. But hey, who knows? There are some bloody good 2-hour documentaries out at the moment, and you can learn a lot from them. Yeah. All right, I love you all, and I'll see you on Friday. I'm going to be telling you some other stuff that's really interesting on Friday and another story. All right, see you all later.